Just want to point out that he absolutely didn't put up 50 this week.
Yeah.
Well done, Mitch. Good plug. Good plug.
Yeah. I'm absolutely delighted that neither of you have mentioned it because I was thinking if you do, I have to come up with someone else.
That was an awful pun. I do apologise. We'll move on to wide receiver. Ladies and gentlemen, Seahawks and football fans everywhere, a very warm welcome back to the We Talk Seahawks podcast. I hope you're all doing well. We've got something a little bit different tonight. We're kicking off a brand new segment that we're all very excited about here at the We Talk Seahawks podcast. It's an avenue of our pod that we haven't really delved into other than random little flurries of rants or praise during our podcast about, oh, he did really well for me in fantasy this week. We all love fantasy. We're all massive fantasy players. So we thought, well, surely it would make sense to introduce a brand new fantasy segment, and we found the perfect partner to do that with, who we'll introduce to you very soon. But as always, I do have one of my right-hand man with me, Mitch. How are you doing, mate?
Very good, yeah, very good. I've been loving fantasy football the last few weeks. I've been using Gurmeet's app, which is the Fantasy Gameday app, a lot for that, as well as our fantasy leagues that we've been that we picked pre-season and we've been doing as a Discord channel and a podcast as well. But who doesn't want to put a few pennies on a 1 week fantasy draft and try and win something? So yeah, been massively into fantasy this year, more so than ever, I think, this year with our Discord and podcast fantasy leagues going so well. So yeah, really good and loving fantasy this year.
Super. Well, as Mitch has alluded to there, we do have this perfect partner to join us to produce these fantasy podcasts with. That is Fantasy Gameday app, and we do have Gurmeet from the Fantasy Gameday app with us tonight, and hopefully for most weeks going forward for the rest of the season as we make this a regular occurrence. Gurmeet, firstly, how are you, mate? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us on.
Not a problem at all. How are we doing?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that introduction.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. So you're obviously one of the founders of Fantasy Gameday. Just tell us a little bit about sort of who you are, what sort of your background in the NFL, and where the idea for this fantasy app has come from.
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Fantasy Gameday, and put simply, we're a daily fantasy football app exclusively for fans who are aged over 18 in the UK. And we launched 6 weeks ago. So we've spent the past nearly 2 years now developing this app, but we've just launched for the 2023 season. And a little bit different, you alluded to earlier about season-long redraft leagues. We're weekly, we're daily. So every Sunday, you get a team of 8 players, and you hopefully see them racking up some fantasy points. But whereas in a season-long league, you're stuck with them the following week, and if they get injured, they're still there. But with our game, every week is a fresh slate, and you then start the process again the following week and pick a new team. And you pay £7.50 to enter our competition.
And so tell us a little bit about sort of because there's an interesting sort of unique thing that you do differently that I haven't seen another fantasy kind of product offer, and that's the captain sort of situation. So obviously you pick a captain each week and that scores you double points.
Yeah, that's right. We know that as the NFL is growing so fast in the UK, we wanted to appeal to the established fans, but also as we introduce new fans who perhaps have played a lot of Premier League football fantasy, they'll be really familiar with the captain's idea. The captain gets you double points. So we thought it's a nice bridge between the NFL and Barclays Premier League. So yeah, as you say, you pick one player who's your captain and double points. And what we've seen this season, I think I read a statistic that the amount of players scoring like 50 fantasy points a week has happened more times in 6 weeks than it has over the past 8 years. So it's been completely bonkers what's been happening. We've seen guys like Jamar Chase putting up 50 points already. It's amazing. And when that happens, you've got a great chance of having a winning lineup.
Oh,
just want to point out that he absolutely didn't put up 50 this week.
Yeah.
Well done, Mitch. Good plug. Good plug.
Yeah. I set you up for that one.
You did, absolutely. Thank you.
That was an open goal.
That was an open goal, and of course against the Seahawks and your fantastic corners, but also very unlikely that someone can put up 50 points 2 weeks in a row in fantasy football.
No.
Very true.
So once people are signed up to the app and are in there, walk them through how they kind of go about putting a team in and how they pick the teams for each week.
Yeah, sure. So as I said earlier, you pay £7.50 to enter one lineup. We've limited it to 5 lineups per week for the reason being that we want people to enjoy it socially. We're a social betting platform, so we don't want people to spend beyond their means. And also we don't want people putting so many teams in that they dominate the leaderboard. And we've sort of seen what can happen with other platforms, and ours is slightly different. So as you say, you have a captain's position, you choose 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, a couple of wide receivers, your flex and tight end. And you repeat that process every week, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Fantasy Gameday, Gurmeet, all the guys there have been extremely kind to us, and we have been offered a referral code for all of our lovely listeners, or whoever, our new listeners, whoever you are, you can free to use it if you head to fantasygameday.app. So head to that web address, download the app, whether you're on Android or iPhone, just it's the suitable app store. Get the app downloaded. Once you've signed up and created an account with Fantasy Gameday, if you enter your first week, obviously, as Gurmeet said, for £7.50, enter your first lineup and you will get a free entry token on the house, completely free entry for another game day week or another lineup that you want to add in that same week, completely free on the house. So we implore you to do it because it is a load of fun. We've already had a load of fun doing it on this podcast, and we can't wait to crack on now for the rest of the season. Hence why we're going to start talking about fantasy players right now, and we're going to start with the main guys, the signal callers, as we walk through our little kind of structure for these episodes. We're going to go position by position, quarterback, tight end, running back, wide receiver, cover them all. Guys that we like, guys that maybe are banker picks that we like, guys that are maybe more valuable, more sleeper picks that might not cost you as much, might not break the bank, but might score you very good points in this 1 week. So we're going to start with quarterback. I'll go first. A bit of an eyebrow raiser I've gone with, but I've looked at the kind of team that he's playing, and that is Jordan Love. £6,300 is his price tag. Obviously, I think is Patrick Mahomes top of the bracket this week at about 8,400, is he? So
100 Mahomes, yeah.
Yeah, so just short of £2,000 cheaper than Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, you've got a budget of £40,000 to work with here to cover all your position groups, so you have to spread your money around wisely. And I'm looking at Jordan Love and I'm thinking that is potentially spreading my money around wisely. Obviously, the Denver Broncos defense is arguably the worst, if not the worst, at defending quarterbacks and just defending in general this season. So Jordan Love going up against them. Obviously, I think they're coming off the bye week, aren't they? They're coming back off a week off. So hopefully they'll be a bit fresher. And it's just a matchup that I like. I think the Packers O-line will stop the Denver D-line getting to Jordan Love. He'll have time to hit his targets. And I think for the money that he's costing you, he is potentially that in that kind of sort of 18 to 24 maybe point range that would score you well enough for a quarterback to feel justified for picking him. So I like Jordan Love for my quarterback. What do you think, Mitch?
For me, I'm going to pick an old enemy, actually. I'm going to go Jared Goff. I think he's been a picture of consistency so far this year, constantly racking up sort of 18 to 22 scores each week on the app. £5,700 as a price is a very good sort of value standpoint there, I think, for your quarterback position. And also playing the Baltimore Ravens, that's going to be a shootout for me. I think we'll see a high-scoring game. There's plenty of good wide receivers in that Lions core. I think Jared Goff feasts in that game. The Lions are going to feast. Jared Goff's going to win you the game.
Okay, I like it. Gurmeet, obviously, we'll make it clear you don't actually play the game, obviously, with yourself being one of the owners. So you're coming at this from just a purely fantasy fan perspective, what you would do, what you are doing in your other fantasy leagues potentially. In terms of our 2 picks and your pick, what are you thinking at the quarterback position?
If you'd said Goff a week ago, I would have thought, oh, tough away game, not sure. I've seen all those statistics about Goff and how he supposedly struggles away. But I think last week away to Tampa Bay, he dispelled some of those myths. So, yeah, that sounds like a great choice. He's got loads of weapons without David Montgomery as well. There's not going to be much of a run game, so they might lean on Goff even more. I've picked Matt Stafford, 6,100. And I might raise a few eyebrows. I'll tell you my thinking. Cooper Kupp is a main reason. He's looking absolutely brilliant since he's come back. And of course, he's got Puka. But also, Kyron Williams is out. And his understudy, Ronnie Rivers, is out. So they've got, I think they've got Myles Gaskin, Royce Freeman, and Zach Evans, who's played just a few snaps in the NFL. So they might have to put the ball in Stafford's hands. He's been good, by NFL standards. By fantasy production, he's not put up big numbers. But I've got a sneaky feeling on Stafford this week.
Interesting. None of us have gone breaking the bank there. That's interesting. No Patrick Mahomes, none of those kind of stuff. We've all gone for maybe a bit more of a value pick at the quarterback position.
I think Mahomes at 8,100 is a lot of your budget going on one player. And as you said, you've got £40,000 to spend on 8 players. So that's an average of 5,000 per man. 8,100 on Mahomes. It's pricey. Even though I've got the shares behind me.
Yeah, notice. Adams as well, potentially getting traded, maybe linking up with Mahomes, maybe.
Oh, if Mahomes gets Devontae, wow.
It's over, isn't it? It's just over.
that third Super Bowl ring is going to be in Mahomes' hand, I think.
Frightening, absolutely frightening. Running backs then, as we move on to the other position on the offense, one of the other positions on the offense. So we'll start with the two main guys at running back that fill our main positions. I'm trying not to be biased here. I have a feeling Mitch is probably going to pick this guy as well, but that is just is Ken Walker. I mean, the Cardinals are just an absolute disgrace at defending the run. We all know that the Seahawks had a pretty terrible week last week. There's some demons that need to be exercised on offense, and what better team, what better NFC West rival to go and exercise those demons on. And I say that Ken Walker still had 60-odd yards and a touchdown on Sunday, so he maintained his kind of elite status when the offense crumbled around him. But I just look at that matchup and I go, I can just see Ken going for easy in that kind of 100 to 130 yards, 2 touchdowns kind of range, or at least I hope he does. 6,100 is kind of up that upper echelon of running back, but as he should be. And I think he'd be worth every penny you spend of your budget on Ken Walker this week. I can see him scoring big double figure points. Mitch, I'm presuming that you've gone with Ken Walker. I'll be disappointed if you haven't.
No, I have, and for the same
Good.
reasons that you've mentioned, really. So I'll pick someone else that's made it into some of my lineups. I've got pretty excited this week and made 5 lineups already. So I can tell you, Ken Walker made it into all 5. So if you need any kind of voting of confidence into what you've just said, there it is. But someone who's also made it into multiple lineups for me is Brian Robinson Jr. From Washington, lining up this week against the Giants. I think that is looking good. Averaging 14 points a week, has the tendency to get red hot in some games, is a real red zone threat as well. There's touchdown potential there. I think 3 touchdowns in their first 6 games. So, that's a guy who represents really good value as well. Still, after a number of good weeks, 4,500 for Robinson Jr. That is a really good look, I think.
Gurmeet, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm absolutely delighted that neither of you have mentioned this one. Because I was thinking if you do, I have to come up with someone else. Jonathan Taylor, 3,700. And I'll tell you my reasoning with that. I know that Zach Moss has been playing lights out. Zach Moss has been fantastic, but I read stuff today saying that they're going to increase JT's workload. And the last time I heard about a running back workload increase, it was Breece Hall. And they did increase it. So sometimes these coaches do tell the truth. Mm-hmm. If they increase JT's share to even 65% at 3,700, it's a smash. He's awesome, and he's back. So if I was picking a lineup, he'd be in there.
Interesting. On your point about Brian Robinson, I just feel like I'd be wary of him this week because of his handicap, and that's Antonio Gibson just slightly getting an uptick in his production over the last couple of weeks. Certainly fantasy points wise, he's starting to score that kind of 10, 11 points now. So I'm just a little bit worried that his kind of handcuff is starting to become a little bit tighter. My other option that I've gone for at running back is Isaiah Pacheco. He's another guy that I like for the Chiefs, £4,900 against the Chargers. Another kind of bottom tier defense against the run. Not completely horrendous. I think on your app here, Fantasy Gameday, they've got ranked at 21 at defending the run. So it's not great, and we know Pacheco is liable to having big games. He's always a running back that's just kind of a bit like Ken, just consistently plays well and scores well in fantasy. Even if he doesn't score you 20 odd points like Ken has the potential to do, he pretty consistently scores you that 12 to 16 point range, 15 point range. And for 4,900, I think he's really good value as well this week. Any other running backs that we like?
Just on the point, of Pacheco, we play PPR, so you get 1 point for every reception, and he's now being involved in the passing game. I think he had half a dozen receptions last week. So yeah, Pacheco's a great shout. He looks again, the eyeball test, he passes it. He looks really good when he runs. And he's got Mahomes giving him the ball. It's a great shout. Love it.
James, did you call him bottom tier? How did you word it when you said Pacheco? You said something and I thought that was so mean for a Super Bowl winning running back.
I didn't call Pacheco bottom tier.
What?
I said the Chargers were bottom tiir.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, sorry, I take it back.
Dare you
I take
put words in my mouth.
No, sorry, that's my fault for not listening to you. I'm also going to give a shout out to James Cook. I think there's a matchup there against the New England Patriots. Patriots can't stay on the field. Patriots aren't consistently scoring points. Cook's been good in recent weeks. He represents good value again, 3,900. Look, any time you play the Patriots this season, you're gonna look at your weapons and think they're gonna see a 25% uptick in productivity, because Patriots just don't put up enough resistance at the moment to sort of keep you off the field and stop you scoring. So yeah, James Cook again is another good shout.
James Cook, the explorer himself, exploring how to get him fantasy points this week. I like it. Let's move on to that. That was an awful pun. I do apologise. We'll move on to wide receiver. I think this is where I introduce my value pick of the week. And spoiler alert, I'm going quite Packers heavy this week, and that's Romeo Doubs, 3,100. Again, against another Denver defense that we've already mentioned, are just absolutely basket cases this year. We don't take any pleasure in that at all. Disclaimer, as Seahawks fan, we don't. Do we, Mitch? We're not bitter. We're not. We don't.
Absolutely not.
No, well pointed out. Good disclaimer. Very convincing. But no, Romeo Doubs for me, just a sneak over £3,000. I think he's an excellent shout. He's averaging 12.36 fantasy points per game on the Fantasy Gameday app. So for 3,100, I mean, I don't see much better value than that at the wide receiver position this week. So he's my value pick. He's one of my receiver picks for this week. Mitch, who are you liking?
I'm going to defer the kick to Gurmeet because I've gone before him every time, and he runs the gauntlet and watches me call his guy. So you can go first.
For me, Terry McLaurin at 3,900. Have I taken yours?
It literally was my guy. That's so funny. That's so funny. Enjoy McLaurin.
Probably for the same reason that you're going to say, he's always good against the Giants. And if anyone is looking out for a budget quarterback wide receiver stack, Sam Howell might be a cheeky one as well. He 5,500 Sam Howell to pair him with McLaurin is a good one. He's McLaurin, and also Jahan Dotson. I don't know what's happened to him this season. He looked great last year. He's not getting any receptions. He's not getting any love from his quarterback. So yeah, Terry McLaurin would be my guy.
Interesting. Again, like Brian Robinson for Mitch, the only thing that would put me off McLaurin is that handcuff of Curtis Samuel. That's the only thing. I know it's probably a little bit ironic that I've picked Doubs, and obviously they've got what's his face? I can't even, what's his name? Watson. Christian Watson, yeah. So they've got a few handcuffs on that team as well, but I think Doubs is a bit cheaper, so you can risk it a bit more. McLaurin, it's quite a higher price tag. Curtis Samuel, I don't know. But hey, Terry McLaurin has every chance to score on big points, as he always does. So I think it is still a safe pick. He will still score you good points. It's just, that Haddington Cuff is sort of looming in the background. Mitch?
Yeah, so having deferred, I'm regretting that deeply, but it was in the interest of fairness. So looking at a lot of my lineups, actually, I've gone McLaurin in a few of them. But I've also taken Pittman Jr. And I know that that matchup against Cleveland's not the best one he'll get. But he's still averaging 15 points a week. He's 2,900. It's an absolute steal, by the way, averaging 15 points a week. Cleveland are really good at stopping the run, not necessarily the best through the air. So, and also if you look at the teams he's put points up against this week, he hasn't needed an easy matchup to score points. He's done it against pretty much everyone he's faced. So, at 2,900, if you're struggling to pick your last guy with your leftover change, 2,900 on Pittman is a great shout, I think.
Interesting. I like Josh Downs as well from the Colts.
Yeah.
I think he's an interesting player. Again, in that kind of 2,000 price range. Start to score bigger points, started to get an uptick in his role in that slot. Potentially, maybe a better option than Pittman in terms of, I'm just thinking, will the underneath be more open than the deep shots against a Browns defense?
Yeah, possibly.
Maybe, possibly. So that's definitely one in play. Another guy I like is Drake London for just over £4,100. Again, very hit and miss, so he is a risky player. You've seen his production sort of go right down to the basement, all the way to the top this season already. But I'm looking at that Tampa Bay defense. He's scored touchdowns, I think, in the last 2 weeks at least in both games. Played well in the recent weeks. Desmond Ridder started to form a bit more of a connection with him. So I like London going into that Buccaneers matchup. Is there any other receivers that are on our lips?
I've got one, Hollywood Brown in the match against the Seahawks. Obviously, the Seahawks being such a wonderful team, you're going to get a big lead against the Cardinals.
Love that.
Last week, Dobbs kept on missing Hollywood Brown on some plays, and he had a poor game. I think he's a bounce back candidate. And he's very much the alpha in that offense. 4,100, same price as Tyler Lockett and Drake London. I think he's a sneaky good one this week.
I think, like you say, I think the Cardinals are probably going to be forced to put the ball in the air a bit more. Hopefully, if it all goes to plan, they'll abandon the running game pretty quickly, or whatever running game they'll be able to produce. So you would have to think that Marquise Brown will be targeted, quite heavily in this game. So that's a good shout. Mitch, any love for JSN this week?
Yeah, I was actually going to say, before we move off the wide receivers, we should probably take a look at the value on offer with our beloved Seahawks. And I think so much of how well those guys do this week is going to depend on how we react with our play calling, because we looked a little bit devoid of creativity in especially in the red zone, which you probably could extend to a lot of our first 5 games of the season, because a lot of our red zone touchdowns have been Ken Walker from less than 5. So there seems to have been a lack of confidence throwing in short yardage situations in the red zone. If we dial it back a little bit, play a bit of play action, get guys on the move, get Geno moving, take whatever comes up, we'll start seeing those completions to JSN, to DK Metcalf, to Tyler Lockett. If they do that this game, which I think they will, I think they'll try and get that rolling immediately against the Cards. I think we'll see bigger games than we've seen recently for our wide receivers, and possibly more red zone sort of targets for them. So they're looking like great value. The price on them seems to be creeping down because of those issues we've had, and I think we're looking at a big game. So all signs seem to point at Seattle's receivers for value as well. They haven't been the names we've necessarily plucked out, but they're definitely worth considering this week. On JSN, we're seeing an upward trend with him now. We're seeing him targeted in more JSN-like areas rather than behind the line of scrimmage and put up a screen, and towards the end of his route when he's nearly at the sideline and getting him on an out route or whatever. So he's better utilized now, and I think his price tag has diminished to a point where you can start taking a punt on him at that value, and it's all upside from that price standpoint.
Yeah, feels like this could be his first. As we saw in the Bengals game, we're just desperate to give JSN a big breakout game so we can all kind of take a collective sort of exhale of breath and sort of give him that opportunity to have that 100-yard game and just say, okay, we've got our first round pick, his breakout game, we can relax now. And it feels like the Cardinals game is a great opportunity. Like I say, a few little questionable sort of injury reports with DK and Lockett and stuff like that. Maybe some game time decisions coming with those two. And JSN looks primed then potentially to take over a really prominent role in the offense this week. Tight ends again. I'll
just say something from a fantasy football perspective with the Seahawks. I'd love to pick your brains on this one, because from a fantasy football perspective, I see the Seahawks offense as being a lot of mouths to feed. You know, I remember when JSN got drafted, and great from an NFL point of view that you've got so many weapons, but from a fantasy point of view, I thought, oh no, how is he going to get enough fantasy production when Metcalf and Lockett are already there? And I think we've seen that in the first 6 weeks of the season, and I think it's reflected on his price. He's 2,500. Like he's one of the cheapest receivers available on Fantasy Gameday. So that does concern me from a purely fantasy football perspective, that he's the third option on that offense, and then that's not even including Kenneth Walker, who's so dominant on the ground.
Yeah, he's a real boom or bust kind of guy week to week. I think going forward now, I think at 2,500, it is so tempting to just make a play on him this week. But like you say, there is a lot of mouths to feed. You've got DK, you've got Lockett, and for the most point during their careers, they've largely stayed pretty much healthy. So they're always available to the Seahawks. Gino has this rapport and trust with Lockett and DK that he's still building with JSN. So it might be a point in the season where towards the back end, the last 2 or 3 weeks, kind of last quarter of the season, where JSN really starts kind of earning you fantasy points. Maybe he might have a really boom with sort of week this week, and then goes back to kind of tamer point scoring outings for the rest of the week. But it feels like at some point it will click. He's too talented for it not to click with JSN to have a really prominent role in the offense. And I think by the end of the season he will be kind of averaging that sort of 10, 11, 12 points a game receiver that we all thought he would be straight off the bat. But like I say, yeah, it is interesting from your perspective, because as fantasy players, you know, we always look for, you know, players that are in the great situations to draft for our teams. And JSN, like we said on the last pod, he couldn't have probably picked a worse team to join for a fantasy perspective, and for his career perspective, he wanted to go and be the wide receiver one straight away at a team straight out of college. And he's had to take sort of third fiddle role so far, and then that's without mentioning the emergence of Jake Bobo and stuff like that. And he's just had a real bit of a nightmare kick after kick he's received so far, but he is just too talented to eventually not kind of win out and show his value in fantasy.
Garrett Wilson spoke about how JSN is the best out of him and Wilson and Olave. His talent is undoubtedly amazing. And Olave went to the Saints, and he's the one. Garrett Wilson's gone to the Jets, he's the one. And JSN, who's arguably better than both of them, is third option right now. But I don't question the guy's talent. He is awesome.
It's scary when you think of it like that, isn't it? That we're saying JSN could be better than Garrett Wilson, and he's our wide receiver 3, not even getting a look in yet. It's a scary thought. It's an exciting thought, but it's a frustrating thought at the same time. Yeah, tight ends then. Again, like I say, I'd alluded to kind of going a little bit Packers heavy this week, and I have to say I've gone Packers again. As much as I hate them, I've had to go Packers again, because I found another lovely value pick in Luke Musgrave for 3,100. Again, I feel like I've said this before on this podcast. I'm getting a little bit of deja vu, but the Denver defense is awful. They're the worst defense in the league for defending against the tight ends, or at least according to Fantasy Gameday app, they are 32nd in opposition ranking against the tight end. Now, Musgrave, I know, hasn't really scored amazing fantasy points. I think he's averaging just shy of 7 fantasy points on the Fantasy Gameday app. But it feels like, again, that just for 1 week in sort of every 3, 4, 5 weeks, he'll just have a really, really good week. And I kind of feel like this is his week, that he might just go and score 14 or 15 points, get a couple of touchdowns in the red zone against these Denver defenses, and just score decent points this week. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but he's who I'm looking at anyway.
Logan Thomas for me at Washington. Not a name on the tip of everyone's tongue. But from a price standpoint, 3,100. If you picking your tight end last, and again you're short on pennies at the end, a good way to spend 3,100, averaging 9.5 a week. As a fairly, he's not a household name, but 9.5 a week is not a small amount of points for your tight end. He's only 1 week removed from having a 21-point week, so he's got that kind of explosive game in him. So yeah, and also if you look at his targets versus his actual catches, it's not dropping many. Again, that matchup against the Giants, they'll see plenty of ball. He'll get plenty of targets, not dropping the ball. I expect them to score a lot of points, and he represents great value, 3,100. Logan Thomas.
I like it. Gurmeet, what are you thinking with tight ends this week?
It's just dawned on me you would have gone with Washington players at running back, receiver, and tight end.
Yeah, me and James are boring. He's gone Packers. I've gone.
Yeah.
Are we on the wrong podcast here? I feel like I need to find. Yeah, a Washington Commanders podcast for me.
I've gone with Mayer, the rookie tight end for the Raiders, at 2,700. Quite often with fantasy football, I also like seeing who actually looks good, and he's another player who's really impressed me in the opening weeks of the season, as well as him putting up fantasy points. The only issue I have with my own selection, if I can contradict myself, is I think Davante Adams is due one, that guy over there, especially after he's come out today and started complaining that he's not getting enough of the ball. So I anticipate him to be hyper targeted this week, but still at 2,700. I feel that quite a few people on Fantasy Gameday, when I look through the way they approach the game, it's Travis Kelce. I think he's 6,500, or it's budget tight end. That seems to be the approach. So if we're going budget, then 2,700. That matches that criteria.
Yeah, it's a good point that on Davante Adams. Obviously, with those comments coming out this week or today, whenever it was, it feels like if the Raiders don't want to trade him, we'll see what I think we'll kind of see what the Raiders want to do with Davante Adams this week. If he gets a diminished role again after coming up with those kind of incendiary comments, those pretty obvious comments that either get me the ball or I'm out of here kind of thing. If they don't get him the ball again, that would suggest to me that the Raiders are quite happy to trade him then. But if they're not sort of happy to trade him, then there's potential this week that Davante Adams might just go off for ridiculous points as the Raiders kind of try and sort of do anything to sweeten him, do anything to make him feel better, and just say, right, look, you have all of the ball this week. So Davante Adams is a really interesting play this week, going back to the wide receivers. Flex options this week, who are we thinking for flex? I've gone Josh Jacobs personally. I know he's a running back, and I know he's more expensive than Pacheco, but I've got him in my flex. Again, Chicago run defense pretty poor. It's always a good battle between the Raiders and the Bears whenever they play, and Josh Jacobs has been doing really, really solid work all season, just that kind of 14 to 15 point range average, just super reliable so long as he's healthy. And for his price range, I'll take 15 points for 5,300 points. So he's my flex play this week. What we thinking?
I mean, when I pick my teams on this app, and Gurmeet will attest to the fact that I've played it extensively for the last few weeks, and I've had a lot of fun, but I've played it extensively. I always take the same strategy. I never buy a premium quarterback. I always try and pick up a good value, good matchup quarterback and get the best value I can. I pick my captains, which we'll come on to shortly. I always look at them. I try and look at the top three performing players in the league and make sure whichever one of those is playing, or if there's multiple, pick one of those. And then my flex player is the guy that I didn't pick as captain. So for the last few weeks, it's been either Hill as captain or CMC, and the opposite player goes into the flex. So when I go through it, I do it in that order. In order of the app, it's pick your captain, pick your quarterback, and flex is second bottom. So I'll go first, second, and then second bottom. Everything else then is just what have I got left? What's the average? And I fill out. So when we talk about flex, from my perspective with this app, I'm looking at Cooper Kupp, I'm looking at Devontae Adams, I'm looking at Stephon Diggs. I'm looking at these guys who are seriously consistent performers in this league. And of course, that flex spot in your app allows the picking of a running back. So if I hadn't have gone Ken Walker in the running back slot, I'd seriously consider him in my flex sort of strategic position. But Cooper Kupp's the pick for me. We touched on him earlier. He's come back in from his injuries, looking well rested, ready to go. They didn't take any risks on him. They probably gave him an extra 3 weeks to sit than he needed, and he's hit the ground absolutely running. So Cooper Kupp has to go in. For me, it's in the flex.
Okay, Gurmeet, what are we thinking?
Actually, I just want to pick up on that point, Mitch. The way we've designed the game is so that you can have a team full of stars. Again, going to my point earlier that we're going to be having a lot of new NFL fans in the UK over the next few years as the NFL invests more money and time into this country. So what we wanted, and it's a conscious decision, is that you can, with the budget and the way that we price players, is you can have loads of big names in there. And you're not, we've talked a lot about budget options tonight, but actually the reality is you can have guys like Diggs and Kupp in your team. So on that note, I've gone, and I'm so glad you didn't name him, Keenan Allen.
Oh, yeah.
He's just been incredible this season. 6,500. I remember a few weeks ago, one of our winners had him as their captain, and he scored nearly 100 captain points. And that was a game where he threw a touchdown as well to Mike Williams before Mike Williams got his ACL injury. And when I watched the Cowboys-Chargers game on Monday night, Herbert's only got eyes for Keenan Allen. It's Eckler or it's Allen, and he's 31 and he's playing like he's 21. It's just brilliant to see. So he would be my flex choice.
Interesting. Some big hitters in the flex there. I like it going bold. Captains then. This is our double point scorers for the week, as we've clarified. Potentially where your games are won and lost. Well, not your games, but where maybe fantasy leaderboard position is won and lost. I've gone for someone we've already mentioned. Mitch has already mentioned him, and that's Cooper Kupp. He's going to be my captain player, or my recommended captain player for this week. Like I say, the Pittsburgh secondary not having a good time this year. Talented, they're a weird team, Pittsburgh. Talented defense as they always are, but just not putting it together this year. So I like that matchup. Cooper Kupp, as you say, Mitch, fully healthy, fully ready to go. He's hit the ground absolutely running, as you say, and I feel he's in for another really big day. As much as I hate to say it, I think he is. He's an outstanding receiver, and I think he's going to score outstanding points this weekend. So he would be my captain player for this week. Mitch, who are you thinking?
Well, before I tell you who I'm picking, I want to share with you. Sorry, I'm going to take
coy as always.
I'm just going to say that I've talked a little bit about my approach of how I pick, right? And I feel like your captain is a guy that you really, really, really want to put a lot of thought into, purely because if he's scoring your points and you're looking to top that table, you need to make sure that the guy you're picking as your captain is going to be one of the top 3 scoring players that week. And I can look no further. I think your captain picks itself, honestly. Stephon Diggs has been a remarkably consistent wide receiver this year, previous years, and again, I mentioned earlier that the New England Patriots are a great matchup. That is a key player. I just think that matchup, that player is unavoidable. I think you've got to really give some thought to Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, just a guy who's, like you say, is an elite receiver and always is Josh Allen's first target. You've got the Gabe Davis handicap, but I don't think it matters too much with Stephon Diggs' production. It's never bothered him. He's always produced. So Diggs is always a fairly safe player for a captain spot. Mitch, Gurmeet, who are you thinking?
Before I tell you my pick, I have actually named him earlier as well. The captain pick is so important. Last week, 11 managers out of 138 had Raheem Mostert, the overall winner, had Raheem Mostert as captain. The week before, Jamar Chase scored 104 captain points. The winner had Jamar Chase. And I don't think 2 weeks ago many people had much faith in the Bengals offense. So there's only a few people who had Chase as their captain. And I'm logging this out, but there's a narrative I've got where with the wide receiver, when they come out to the press and they complain that they're not getting enough targets, they get the ball that weekend. We saw it with AJ Brown earlier this season. He had a bit of a disagreement with Jalen Hurts, and Brown's now got 125 receiving yards in 4 consecutive games. Devontae Adams. He is my captain this week if I'm putting in a lineup. I think, either he puts up a dud, and that's the risk you run, or he'll be hyper-targeted. So I'll go Devontae.
Interesting. That like you said, I don't think many people will pick Devontae Adams for the captain this week, but I think those who do may well reap benefits of it. It's either going to really work for you or it's going to backfire, isn't it? It's a risky play, but hey, it's go big or go home, in my opinion, with fantasy stuff. And I'm always here for the ballsy picks. So I love Devontae Adams at captain.
If he gets 3 points this week, please nobody message me.
Refund.
I'll edit this bit. I'll edit it.
I can't see the future. It's just a hunch. So please don't DM me.
Excellent. Well, that's all the positions covered. I hope you all enjoyed this first podcast. As I say, please do go to fantasygameday.app, download the app. Once you sign up, like you say, use our referral code, which is WTSEAWTC. Put that code in, enter your first lineup, and you will get a free entry on the house. And I can absolutely confirm that so long as you have the money and the funds available to play these games, obviously, as we always stress when it comes to gambling, please do only bet what you can afford, be gamble aware, but you will be hooked. It's so fun. It's just a new element, a new unique element to the fantasy game that we all love. So please do tune back in with us next week. Gurmeet, just a little bit of a shout out. I'll give you this chance to just kind of shout out where we can find you on social media, and all your stuff for our followers to go and follow yourselves on social media.
Yeah, please do. We're at fantasy_gameday on Twitter or X and Instagram. You can feel free to DM me as well, except if you chose Devontae Adams as your captain. And as you said, guys, if you head to www.fantasygameday.app, on our website is the link to Apple App Store and Google Play Store, and you can download the app from there. And I hope you enjoy it. We want it to be fun. It's a social betting platform, and as you say, it's for fans in the United Kingdom only, aged over 18. And please just have fun and don't spend beyond your means.
So we'll be back next week, as always, to kind of review how we've done, how some of our picks have done, and we won't hide away from it. It's you can't hide on this podcast thing. So we'll either embrace it or blow our own trumpets next week, and obviously we'll look forward to week 7 as well. But for now, thank you all for tuning in. As always, please do go to all the socials, Fantasy Game Day and our socials if you're not already followed. Follow us up, stay tuned, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.